The stars trembled before the might of the Vorn Empire. For 10,000 years, they had conquered every corner of the known galaxy without meeting true resistance. Their warships were like floating mountains of metal, their weapons could turn planets to ash, and their soldiers had forgotten the meaning of fear. Admiral Krell stood on the command deck of the Imperial flagship, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display of a newly discovered solar system. His scaled skin reflected the blue light as he studied the third planet from the star. "Another world for the Empress," he said, his voice deep and certain. He had added 37 planets to the Empire during his service. This would be 38. "Admiral, the scan shows signs of primitive civilization," said Lieutenant Dorn, the young science officer who had first noticed the solar system. "The beings call themselves humans." Krell laughed. Every species thought they were special until they met the Vorn. Then they learned their place in the galaxy. "Prepare a standard reconnaissance mission," he ordered. "We will follow protocol as always." The reconnaissance ship, sleek and silent, approached the blue planet. Lieutenant Dorn watched with growing confusion as the data poured in. Something was not right. "Admiral, I'm seeing strange readings," Dorn reported through the communication link. "The planet's atmosphere shows rapid changes. The species has gone from simple tools to splitting atoms in less than 10,000 years. "Impossible," Krell replied. "No species evolved that quickly. The Vorn had taken 50,000 years to develop space travel. These humans claim to have done it in less than 100 years. There's more, sir. They fight each other constantly. Their history is nothing but war followed by bigger war." Krell dismissed this as primitive behavior. All species fought among themselves before they were properly civilized by Vorn rule. "Continue with the mission, Lieutenant. Empress Tala expects results, not excuses." The Empress sat on her crystal throne on the Vorn homeworld, her 6 limbs arranged in the formal position of authority. When Krell's report came through, she showed no emotion, as was proper for a ruler of her status. "These humans sound like animals," she said. "Bring me specimens for the menagerie." But Commander Rax, leader of the scout team, was about to discover that humans were unlike any animals the Vorn had cataloged before. The scout ship entered Earth's atmosphere under cover of night, its cloaking technology making it invisible to the primitive human detection systems. Rax selected a small settlement in a region the humans called Montana for their first collection. "Remember, no permanent damage to the specimens," Rax told his team. "The Empress prefers her trophies unmarked." They descended on the sleeping settlement, expecting easy success. The plan was simple: stun the inhabitants, select the finest examples, and return to the ship. The first sign that something was wrong came when the stun weapons had little effect. The humans woke up. The second sign was when the humans reached for their own weapons. "Impossible," gasped Rax as primitive projectiles tore through his advanced armor. The metal slugs were simple technology, but they moved with surprising speed and force. Half his team lay dead before they could retreat. Rax dragged himself back to the ship, green blood leaking from wounds that should have been impossible to inflict with such primitive weapons. "How?" he kept asking as the medical unit tried to save him. "How did they hurt us?" Admiral Krell received the report with disbelief. No species had killed Vorn soldiers in combat for 3,000 years. Certainly not a species that still used combustion engines and had only recently discovered nuclear fission. "Lieutenant Dorn," he said, his voice now lacking its usual certainty, "tell me everything about these humans. I want to know what we're dealing with." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Krell felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was worry. The medical bay of the Vorn flagship hummed with urgent activity. Commander Rax lay on the examination table, his green blood still seeping through bandages. The medical team worked frantically to save his life, their movements betraying confusion at the nature of his wounds. Admiral Krell entered the room. His face hardened into a mask that hid his growing unease. "Report," he demanded. The chief medical officer looked up from Rax's broken body. The human weapons should not have penetrated our armor. It's simple metal propelled by chemical explosions. Yet somehow, they found the weak points in our suits. Points that are not obvious. Luck, suggested Krell, not fully believing his own words. No, Admiral, not luck. The medical officer displayed a holographic image of the damage. The human bullets hit the exact same spots on each of our fallen soldiers. They knew where to aim. Krell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep disturbance in Vorn body language. How could they know? We have never encountered their kind before. From his bed, Rax spoke, his voice weak but urgent. Admiral, they were not afraid. When they saw us, there was no panic. They acted with purpose. This troubled Krell more than the casualties. Every species showed fear when first meeting the Vorn. It was natural. It was expected. Lieutenant Dorn entered the medical bay, carrying a data tablet. Admiral, I've compiled the information you requested on humans. Speak, ordered Krell. Humans are the only known intelligent species to evolve on a death world. Their planet has extreme gravity by our standards, deadly temperature variations, and thousands of natural predators. Krell frowned. Nothing intelligent should have evolved in such conditions. There's more, sir. Their bodies are remarkably resilient. They can survive losing limbs, significant blood loss, and can heal from injuries that would kill any Vorn. They can adapt to almost any environment on their planet, from burning deserts to frozen wastelands. How is this possible? Asked Krell. Their history suggests an answer, Dorn continued. Humans have been at war with each other throughout their entire existence. They fight over territory, resources, beliefs, and sometimes for no reason we can understand. War is not just something they do. It's part of what they are. In the Empire's war room, Empress Tala received the news of the failed mission with cold fury. The Vorn High Council gathered around her, their collective mood shifting between disbelief and alarm. Show me these creatures, she commanded. A holographic display activated, showing various humans going about their daily lives. The council watched as humans worked, played, fought, and loved. They look soft, said one council member. Weak. Do not be deceived, warned Krell. We recovered this footage from their information networks. The display changed to show human warfare throughout history. Swords and shields gave way to guns and bombs, then to missiles and nuclear weapons. The council watched in stunned silence as humans killed each other with increasing efficiency. This species turns its violence inward, noted Tala. Imagine what they would do if united against an outside threat. The implications hung heavy in the room. We must learn more, decided Tala. Send infiltrators. I want to understand how these humans think, how they fight, what drives them. 2 days later, Agent Nix received his orders. The Vorn operative had undergone extensive modification to appear human. His mission: integrate into human society and gather intelligence on their weaknesses. Nix's ship approached Earth under cover of a meteor shower, landing in an isolated area near a human settlement they called Portland. As he prepared to make first contact, he reviewed his training. Remember, his commander had told him, these creatures are primitive but dangerous. Do not underestimate them. Nix stepped out of his concealed ship, now appearing as a human male of average build. He carried a fabricated identity and a cover story about being a traveler. His mission was supposed to be simple: observe and report. He would soon discover that nothing about humans was simple. As Nix walked toward the lights of the human city, Admiral Krell stared at the stars from his command ship, haunted by a growing realization. For the first time in Vorn history, they had found a species that might not bend to their will. The question was no longer if humans would submit. The question was what would happen if they didn't. Agent Nix walked through the streets of Portland, his artificial skin tingling with every new sensation. Rain fell from the sky, something that never happened on the climate-controlled Vorn homeworld. Humans rushed past him, some holding fabric shields they called umbrellas above their heads, others simply letting the water soak them. What strange creatures, thought Nix. They could control the atom but couldn't stop the rain. A small human child bumped into him and looked up with wide eyes. "Sorry, mister." The child ran back to an adult, who smiled apologetically at Nix. Nix nodded, trying to mimic human expressions. His training had covered basic interactions, but nothing had prepared him for the chaos of real human society. They moved in unpredictable patterns, laughed at things that made no sense, and seemed to change emotions as quickly as Vorn ships jumped through space. He found lodging in a building humans called a motel. The owner asked few questions when Nix paid in their currency, which he had fabricated based on digital scans. His room was small and smelled of strange chemicals, but it would serve as his base of operations. That night, Nix sent his first report back to the fleet. Humans appear disorganized but function efficiently despite this. They show no signs of recognizing me as non-human. We'll continue observations. Meanwhile, on the Vorn command ship, Lieutenant Dorn made a discovery that sent ripples of concern through the fleet's leadership. He rushed to Admiral Krell's quarters, forgetting proper protocol in his urgency. "Admiral, I've completed the deeper analysis of human biology," Dorn said, breathing hard. "You need to see this immediately." Krell looked up from battle plans he had been studying. "This had better be important, Lieutenant." "Humans are not prey animals," Dorn said, his voice tight with stress. "Every other intelligent species we've encountered evolved from creatures that were hunted. Creatures that survived by hiding, running, or living in large groups for protection." "Your point?" Krell asked, though a feeling of dread was growing in his chest. "Humans evolved from predators. Their eyes face forward for hunting. Their teeth are designed for tearing meat. Their bodies are built to chase down prey until it collapses from exhaustion." Krell stood, his tall frame towering over the science officer. "That's impossible. Predators don't develop higher intelligence. They don't need to." "These did," Dorn insisted. "And there's more. Humans don't just fight wars, they consume them. Their entertainment, their stories, their games, all celebrate combat. They prepare their young for violence from an early age." On Earth, Agent Nix was learning this firsthand. He watched human children in a park playing games that mimicked warfare. He observed adults consuming violent imagery on screens for enjoyment. In a museum, he stood before paintings of battles that were hundreds of years old, preserved like treasured memories. That night, Nix experienced something unexpected. A human approached him as he walked back to his motel. The man held a knife and demanded Nix's valuables. "Money." "Now," the human growled. Nix could have killed the man easily, even without weapons. Vorn's strength far exceeded human capabilities. But his mission required maintaining cover. As he reached for his wallet, another human appeared from nowhere and struck the attacker from behind. The would-be robber fell, and the second human helped Nix to his feet. "You okay, man?" "Some people are just trash," said his rescuer, a simple laborer based on his clothes. "I am." "Okay. Thank you," Nix replied, confused by the intervention. "No problem. Watch yourself out here at night." The human walked away, leaving Nix staring after him. The Vorn agent had just witnessed two contradictory behaviors in moments. One human trying to harm him for resources, another risking himself to help a stranger. That night, Nix sent another report. Humans are unpredictable. They can show extreme aggression and extreme altruism, sometimes within seconds of each other. They appear to operate on emotional responses that override logical behavior. This makes them dangerous in ways we cannot calculate. Admiral Krell read the report with growing concern. The Vorn had conquered the galaxy through predictability. Their superior technology allowed them to anticipate and counter any resistance. But how could they predict a species that didn't even behave consistently within its own parameters? For the first time in his career, Krell wondered if standard conquest protocols were sufficient. For the first time, he questioned whether the Empire should proceed at all. Admiral Krell stood before Empress Tala and the High Council, his posture perfect, but his mind troubled. The chamber was silent as he delivered his report on the human situation. Empress, our infiltration has been ongoing for 14 days. Agent Nix continues to gather intelligence, but his findings are concerning. Tala's 6 fingers tapped rhythmically on her throne. Explain these concerns, Admiral. You speak as if these primitives pose a threat to us. Krell gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed footage captured by Nix's hidden recording devices. This is a human military training facility, Krell explained as the council watched soldiers running through obstacle courses, firing weapons, and engaging in hand-to-hand combat. Note how they deliberately put themselves through physical suffering to build endurance. One council member scoffed. Primitive conditioning. Nothing remarkable. Watch more closely, Krell insisted. These humans push themselves to the point of physical collapse, then continue. Their bodies are failing, yet they refuse to stop. The footage changed to show a human competitive event, a marathon race. These are not soldiers, Krell noted. These are ordinary humans participating in a voluntary activity they call a sport. They run until they vomit, until their muscles tear, until their feet bleed, for entertainment. Empress Tala leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Lieutenant Dorn stepped forward, data tablet in hand. Empress, humans have a quality we've never encountered in other species. They call it determination. It allows them to ignore physical limitations, pain signals, even survival instincts to achieve goals. That's not possible, said a council member. Pain exists to prevent self-destruction. For every species except humans, Dorn replied. They override it. And there's more. We've been conducting small-scale abductions to test human capabilities. The display changed to show a containment cell. Inside was a single human male, sitting calmly on a bench. This human was captured 3 days ago, Krell explained. We placed him in our standard holding cell, the same design that has contained every other species we've encountered. The council watched as the human methodically examined his cell, testing walls, floor, ceiling. He found the air vent, removed his clothing, tore it into strips, and fashioned a crude tool. Within hours, he had removed the vent cover and was working his way through the ventilation system. He escaped? Tala asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. He did, Krell confirmed. And he wasn't the only one. Of 12 humans captured for study, 9 have escaped or attempted escape. 3 died in the process, but showed no hesitation in risking death for freedom. Meanwhile, on Earth, Agent Nix was facing a different kind of problem. His cover identity had drawn the attention of human authorities. Small inconsistencies in his fabricated documents had raised flags in their security systems. As he returned to his motel room, he found a human female waiting for him. She wore plain clothes but carried herself like a soldier. Mr. Smith, she said, using his false name. I'm Agent Miller with Homeland Security. I'd like to ask you some questions about your background. Nix calculated his options. He could kill the human easily, but that would attract more attention. He could flee, but they might track him to his hidden ship. Of course, he said, attempting a smile. What would you like to know? The questioning was intense. The human seemed to know exactly which parts of his story were fabricated. Her eyes never left his face, watching for reactions. Your passport has inconsistencies, she said finally. And your social security number belongs to a man who died 20 years ago. Nix tensed, preparing to neutralize the threat. You're running from something, she continued, surprising him. Political asylum. Nix blinked, confused by the unexpected conclusion. Yes, he said, seizing the opportunity. My government would kill me if I returned. Agent Miller's face softened, though her eyes remained watchful. Why didn't you just say so? There are legal channels for asylum seekers. To Nix's shock, the human offered help instead of detention. She gave him contact information for legal services and warned him about using false documents. Next time, "You might meet someone who's not so understanding," she said before leaving. Nix immediately sent an encrypted message to the fleet. Humans show unexpected responses. When they detect deception, they sometimes respond with compassion rather than aggression. This makes infiltration both easier and more complex. They trust even when they should not. Admiral Krell read the message with growing unease. A species that could not be predicted could not be controlled. And the Vorn Empire was built on control. Admiral Krell paced the command deck, watching Earth rotate slowly on the main view screen. After weeks of observation and infiltration, Empress Tala had grown impatient for results. The reports on human unpredictability and resilience troubled the High Council, but many dismissed them as exaggerations. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds," Counselor Vex had declared. "These humans are merely another primitive species with delusions of importance." Krell was not so certain. Something about humans disturbed him on a level he could not articulate. Still, orders were orders. The Empress had commanded a demonstration of Vorn power, a limited strike on a military installation to show humans their proper place in the galaxy. "Target identified," reported the weapons officer. "Human military base in a region they call Nevada. Minimal civilian presence." Krell nodded. "Prepare strike force. Remember, this is a demonstration only. We want to frighten them, not destroy them completely." 3 Vorn attack ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to human radar. They positioned themselves above the military base, where fighter jets sat in neat rows and soldiers moved about in orderly patterns. "Begin the operation," Krell commanded from the flagship. The first energy blast struck the base's command center, vaporizing it instantly. The second and third disabled the runway and communications array. Humans scattered like insects, some taking cover, others running to emergency stations. "Primitive response," noted the tactical officer. "They have no organized defense against aerial attack of our magnitude." Then something unexpected happened. A human aircraft rose from a concealed hangar untouched by the initial strike. Instead of fleeing, it flew directly toward the nearest Vorn ship. "They're attempting to engage," said the tactical officer, sounding almost amused. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields." The human aircraft fired missiles that dissipated harmlessly against Vorn defenses, but instead of breaking off the attack, the aircraft continued its approach. "They're going to impact," reported the officer, his amusement changing to confusion. "They're sacrificing themselves." The human pilot crashed his aircraft directly into the Vorn ship's engine housing, the one vulnerable point in its design. The resulting explosion damaged the Vorn vessel's propulsion system, causing it to spin out of control. "Impossible," whispered Krell, watching the feed from orbit. "How do they know to target that specific location?" More human aircraft appeared, launching from distant bases. They coordinated their attacks with ground forces firing experimental weapons that somehow disrupted Vorn cloaking technology. Within minutes, the damaged Vorn ship crashed to the ground. The second Vorn ship turned its weapons on the approaching human forces, destroying several aircraft. But the humans kept coming, wave after wave, seemingly indifferent to their losses. "Admiral." The communication officer's voice was tight with alarm. "We've lost contact with the second ship. The humans have somehow disabled its communications array." On the surface, the second Vorn ship found itself surrounded by human ground forces. Their primitive projectile weapons couldn't penetrate the ship's hull, but they didn't need to. The humans had identified the ship's sensor array and targeting systems, focusing their fire on these vulnerable points. The third Vorn ship began emergency extraction procedures, trying to rescue survivors from the other vessels. That's when the human trap was sprung. Hidden anti-aircraft batteries opened fire, not aiming to destroy the ship but to damage its navigation systems. "Retreat," Krell ordered, his voice cold with shock. "Bring back any survivors." The third ship limped back to orbit, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Of the 30 Vorn soldiers sent to demonstrate their superiority, Only 12 returned alive. In the aftermath, Krell faced the High Council via holographic communication. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to fury. "How could primitives defeat our advanced technology?" demanded Counselor Vex. "They knew our weaknesses," Krell replied. "Somehow, they anticipated our attack patterns and identified vulnerabilities in our ships that should have been unknown to them." Empress Tala's face was a mask of cold rage. "You said this would be a simple demonstration of our power." "I was wrong, Empress." The admission cost Krell dearly, but the truth could not be denied. The humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They coordinated in ways our tactical computers couldn't predict. "Explain," Tala commanded. Krell struggled to find the words. "They fight with emotion, with desperation, with something our species abandoned millennia ago." On Earth, Agent Nix watched human news broadcasts reporting a failed terrorist attack on the military base. The humans were already spinning a cover story, keeping panic at bay. But in their eyes, Nix saw something that chilled him. They were ready for war, and they weren't afraid. The Vorn flagship hung in Earth's orbit, hidden behind the moon. Inside the main laboratory, Lieutenant Dorn worked tirelessly, surrounded by screens displaying human history, biology, and behavior. Dark circles had formed under his 4 eyes from lack of sleep. For days, he had been searching for the key to understanding humanity's unexpected abilities. "Lieutenant, the Empress demands answers," Admiral Krell said as he entered the lab. His voice was tight with stress. The failed attack had damaged his standing in the Empire. Dorn looked up from his work, his expression troubled. "Admiral, I found something. Something that explains everything." "Speak plainly." "Every intelligent species we encountered evolved through cooperation. They developed intelligence to work together, to build social structures that protected the group." Dorn pulled up images of various alien races the Vorn had conquered. They all share similar evolutionary paths. They were prey animals that learned to cooperate to survive. "You've told me this before," Krell said impatiently. "Yes, but I didn't understand the full implications." Dorn switched the display to show early human ancestors. Humans didn't evolve intelligence for cooperation. They developed it for hunting, for warfare, for domination. Krell stared at the images. "Continue." "Humans are pack predators. Their entire neurological structure is built around tracking, killing, and consuming other species." Dorn's voice trembled slightly. "Their empathy. The trait we thought was weakness. It evolved to help them work together to hunt more effectively." On the screen, primitive humans were shown bringing down animals many times their size through coordinated attacks. "And there's more," Dorn continued. "Human technological development follows a pattern unlike any species we've encountered." He displayed a timeline of human innovation. "Notice how their greatest technological leaps coincide with their periods of warfare. They don't advance through peaceful exploration like we did. They advance when trying to kill each other." Krell's eyes widened as the pattern became clear. The harnessing of electricity, flight, nuclear energy, space travel, all developed during or immediately after major conflicts. "This explains their technological inconsistency," Dorn said. "They don't advance in a logical, orderly progression. They make massive leaps in areas related to warfare, while other technologies lag behind." "How does this help us defeat them?" Krell asked. Dorn's expression grew more troubled. "Admiral, that's the problem. Our standard conquest strategy relies on overwhelming force to trigger surrender. But humans," he paused, searching for words. "Humans don't respond to force the way other species do. When threatened with destruction, they don't become more compliant. They become more dangerous." On Earth, Agent Nix had come to the same conclusion. He walked through a human museum of warfare, observing the reverent way humans preserved instruments of death. Glass cases displayed weapons from different eras, stone spears next to automatic rifles, primitive bombs beside guided missiles. Most disturbing to Nix was the way human children looked at these displays, not with horror, but with fascination. They asked questions about killing range and explosive power with casual curiosity. Their parents answered matter-of-factly, as if discussing farming equipment. A special exhibition caught Nix's attention. It showed humans who had continued fighting despite catastrophic injuries, soldiers who carried wounded comrades for miles, pilots who flew despite severe burns, civilians who defended their homes while dying. "They call it heroism," said a voice beside him. Nix turned to see an elderly human male, a veteran based on the insignia on his cap. "When we're pushed to our limits, that's when we find out what we're really made of." Nix nodded, uncertain how to respond. The human smiled and walked away, unaware he had been speaking to an alien. That night, Nix sent his most urgent report. Humans weaponize their own suffering. What would break the spirit of any rational species only strengthens their resolve. The more we attack them, the more dangerous they will become. Admiral Krell presented these findings to the High Council with a recommendation that stunned the Empire. We should not attempt to conquer Earth. For the first time in our history, we face a species that becomes more formidable when threatened with extinction. Empress Tala's expression was cold with fury. "You suggest we show weakness, that we let primitives defy us." "I suggest we show wisdom," Krell replied. "These humans cannot be conquered through our standard methods. The more force we apply, the harder they will resist, and the more quickly they will advance technologically. Our attack has already united them against an external threat. If we escalate, they will respond in kind, and their response will be unpredictable." The Great Hall of the Vorn Empire had never been so quiet. Hundreds of counselors sat in stunned silence as Admiral Krell finished presenting his radical proposal. The air felt heavy with tension, almost electric with the weight of 10,000 years of history about to change. "Diplomatic contact," Krell repeated, his voice steady despite the sea of shocked faces. "Not conquest, not subjugation, but an approach of equals." Empress Tala sat motionless on her crystal throne, her 6 fingers no longer tapping their usual rhythm. For the first time in her 200-year rule, she appeared uncertain. "You would have us treat with primitives as if they were our peers." Counselor Vex finally broke the silence, his voice thick with disgust. "They are barely space-capable. They destroyed 2 of our warships with technology centuries behind ours," Krell replied. "They accomplished in days what our tactical computers said was impossible, and Lieutenant Dorn's research shows their rate of advancement accelerates under threat. If we push them to the brink." He let the sentence hang unfinished. No one needed to hear the rest. Dorn stepped forward, data tablet in hand. "Empress, our projections indicate that if we engage in full-scale war with humans, they will achieve technological parity with us within 1 generation. Their resource mobilization during conflict exceeds anything we've recorded in any species." The council chamber erupted in voices, some calling for immediate withdrawal from the Earth system, others demanding overwhelming force to crush the humans before they could advance further. Tala raised a hand, and silence fell instantly. "Admiral Krell, what exactly are you proposing?" "A delegation, a formal first contact, conducted openly. We acknowledge their sovereignty over their world and propose peaceful relations. And if they reject peace, if they seek revenge for our attack?" asked Tala. Krell's 4 eyes closed briefly. "Then we will face an enemy unlike any we have known. But I believe they will respond to respect with respect." 3 days later, Krell stood on the bridge of a Vorn diplomatic vessel as it descended toward Earth. Unlike the warships, this craft was designed to be seen, its hull gleaming in the sunlight. Lieutenant Dorn stood beside him, along with Agent Nix, recalled from his mission. "The humans have detected us," Dorn reported. "Their military forces are mobilizing, but not attacking. They're waiting to see what we do," Krell said. "Transmit the greeting message on all frequencies. On Earth, in a hastily assembled command center, General Mark Rivers watched the alien ship descend. The attack on the Nevada base had confirmed what humanity had suspected for years. They were not alone, and not all visitors were friendly. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported a communications officer. It's a request for peaceful contact." Rivers' eyes narrowed. "Put it through." Admiral Krell's image appeared on the main screen. The human stared at the alien's 4 eyes, scaled skin, and tall frame. "People of Earth," Krell began. "I am Admiral Krell of the Vorn Empire. I come to formally apologize for our hostile actions and to request peaceful dialogue." The room was silent as the alien continued. "We have observed your world and come to understand that your species is unique among those we have encountered. We propose an exchange of knowledge and culture as equals, not as conquerors." Rivers studied the alien's face, looking for signs of deception. After 27 years of military service, he had developed a knack for knowing when someone was lying, even when that someone had 4 eyes and green skin. "Why should we trust you after you attacked us?" Rivers asked bluntly. "You shouldn't," Krell replied, surprising the humans. "Trust must be earned. We attacked because we misunderstood your nature. We thought you were like other species we had encountered, that you would submit to superior force. We were wrong." The Vorn ship landed in a neutral location agreed upon by both sides. Admiral Krell stepped onto Earth's soil, the first Vorn in history to visit a world as a guest rather than a conqueror. General Rivers met him halfway, 2 soldiers of different worlds sizing each other up. "You're not what I expected," Rivers said. "Nor you," replied Krell. "My scientists tell me your species evolved as predators, that you advance most rapidly through conflict." Rivers nodded. "We've had plenty of practice fighting each other. Yet you also show remarkable compassion. Your people sheltered one of our agents, believing him to be a refugee." Rivers smiled slightly. "We contain multitudes, Admiral. We're capable of great violence and great kindness. Sometimes it's hard to predict what you'll get." "That," said Krell, "is exactly what makes your species so formidable." As they walked toward the meeting tent, Krell looked up at the blue sky of this strange world. For 10,000 years, the Vorn had feared no one. But perhaps fear had been their limitation all along. Perhaps there was something to learn from these humans who transformed fear into determination. Back on the Vorn homeworld, Empress Tala updated the galactic database personally. Next to Earth's entry, she added a new classification: approach with respect. Make no threats. Remember that in humans, we may have found not just equals, but teachers.